What's up, Internet? You're tuning in episode 72 of the Steam Deck Podcast, Flip Screen Games' weekly gaming podcast, all about Valve's portable PC powerhouse, the Steam Deck. I'm your host, Peter Messi, joined as always by my very good friend and co-host, Mr. Max Wright.
Ahoy, Mr. Pete.
Hello there, Mr. Max. Another week without our beloved Steven, but you and I are ready to hold it down.
Yeah, boy, what better week to not have Steve on the show than with a very spec-heavy list of stats and numbers and pieces of hardware.
You know what? We did our homework. We did our homework, Max. You
We
and
did our
I
homework.
think we're ready. I think we're
I
ready
think
to
we're ready.
talk about it.
And luckily, I also don't think that any of this matters. So,
That's what you want to tell them right before the episode starts.
but stick around because the second half of the show, we're going to be talking about Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown, which I've been playing on the Steam Deck. And yeah, if you've been avoiding this because it's not on the Steam store, on the Steam store on Steam, or you're interested in how it runs on the Steam Deck, I've got you covered, baby. Just hang around.
Perfect. And of course, the thing we're going to talk about at the front of the show here is a new rumor that's making the rounds that claims that a leaker has revealed some of the specs for the Steam Deck 2. So, Max, why don't you break down the background on this rumor? Because I think
Sure.
as we always like to say, right? Any rumor you want to take with a grain of salt. This is one you might want to take with like a horse-sized salt pill, but
Mhm.
we'll see how it goes.
I actually think the phrase "the smaller the grain of salt," or the less you believe it, the smaller the grain of salt you take. I think people have got it mixed up that you're supposed to
Okay.
take less salt, the less you're supposed to believe, or the less
All
stock
right.
you're
Okay.
taking it. Well, that's the conversation for another thing. This rumor came from a Chinese forum called the Chip Hell. It's a Chip Hell forum. The forum's called Chip Hell. I've never heard of it. It's not like one of the sort of the larger forums. It's only in Chinese. So for that reason, the comment that this or the rumor here is written entirely in Chinese. So we're looking at. I got this information from Dexerto, who got the translated information from a website called notebookcheck.net.
So
And
we're
they
the fourth rung in this game of telephone.
We are, yes, yeah, but they only got the information because they use a machine learning translator on the original post. So they're sort of then interpreting the translator in their own way. Basically, it's a bit, you know, tenuous and sketchy. I also don't think it's got much weight behind it because it's not like this has come from someone who has a track record of being right, or they've sort of proved they have any kind of
Right.
insider information, or that they happen to work at Valve. There's no real evidence to back this up, or
But
pedigree or anything.
right. So again, keep that in mind, right? Don't
Mhm.
take this to the bank or anything like that. But
Yeah. The only
there
reason I wanted to talk about this is because it's technically news, because other people are talking about it. So now we're going to add to that. I'm not saying this is bullshit, this is horseshit. Why are we covering this? I'm just saying there's nothing to back this up, and I don't want anyone to listen to this episode and go away with, oh, Pete and Max said that this is happening. No, we're reporting
right.
on this. So take it all as like we say, with a grain of salt, because we're just reporting on someone else's reporting of someone else's reporting of a forum post. So
And it's worth pointing out that I think you're probably right that like this is probably just a rumor, right? But right, it's worth pointing out that for you to be a leaker with a track record of getting things right, you got to get the first thing right.
yeah,
So you never know,
that is
right?
true.
So
That is
we'll
true.
talk about it. We'll tell you what we know, and we'll sift through it together, and we can separate fact from fiction as
Absolutely.
we move along here. But basically, what we know, right, so far from the report is that the Steam Deck 2, we'll call it, right,
Mhm.
would have a new CPU that's going to be based on AMD's Zen 4 Hawk Point processors, which are 6-core processors, which to compare with the current deck, it's using the Zen 2 processor that has 4 cores, right? So obviously that's like quite a significant,
Mhm.
right? That's 2 models later of these processors. So
Yeah.
um probably a pretty considerable jump in power. The what is it? How do you say it again? Dexerto? Dexerto?
Dexerto, yeah.
Uh, they speculate, right, that it's like that you're looking at roughly double the power, right, based
Well,
on
so
that
they're
upgrade, but
double the compute units, So that it's got 16 and the Steam Deck has 8. I don't know if that necessarily means double the power because there's got to be some diminishing returns there, right?
Right.
But it does have double the compute units, computers. Well, this is all stuff that Steve would be able to tell us. No, no, it's just this,
That's
blah
not it
blah.
at all.
But my understanding of it is that it's not doesn't mean we're going to get like suddenly a double powered handheld, but we are going to have more juice to play
Significant.
around with,
Yeah,
and it's going to be enough to it's gonna level up the gameplay and
right.
maybe allow you to play some heavier games with a bit more headroom to mess
At the
around with.
very least, we can say that 6 cores is more than 4 cores. You and I can be
We can
confident
say
on that.
that. I
So
can
that is
confidently say that. We might need Steve to come back on next week and verify if 6 is more than 4. If anyone, in the chat knows if 6 or in the Discord knows if 6 is more than 4, please
I'm a
let us know in the
humanities guy.
comments.
I don't do math.
Yeah, I don't do
That's what
numbers.
Steve's for.
I do vibes, and the vibe I'm getting is that 6 is more than 4.
Yes, yes.
But yeah.
Vibes lead me to believe that this would be a more
Yeah, yeah,
powerful
yeah.
device, yes.
I would need to roll for a vibe check, but, I don't have my
So
D20 on me.
and as you were talking about the computing units, right? The difference there is 16 versus 8, right? So
Mhm,
that's again, it's a pretty significant increase in
mhm.
power there. To pull from directly, this is a quote from the article. They say we suspect it might be AMD's RDNA 4 architecture powering the chip, much like how the Steam Deck got slightly earlier access to the RDNA 2 when it debuted. And they make the point there that was something that gave the deck a clear advantage over some of its competitors like the Aya Neo and stuff like that.
Yep.
Um, so like I, I think that's a reasonable speculation, right,
Yeah,
to have
the
made
fact that
there.
we know they exist, we know that so RDNA 2, I know that when that came out, it added ray tracing or allowed AMD GPUs to take advantage of ray tracing because my previous graphics card, which was RD the sort of one of the first RDNA graphics cards, I couldn't do ray tracing in games, whereas with my new one, which is RDNA 2, I can. I haven't quite got the RDNA 3. But I don't know if the RDNA 3 added anything particularly special, but it seems like, based on some of the press images, for sort of the 8040 series or the 80 series Ryzen chips, it seems like there's gonna be a lot of, like, AI involved. I don't know if that's just because that's the current zeitgeist, so that's what they're talking about, or if all chips are capable of this, or if they're intentionally targeting AI. And to be honest, we've seen Xbox in their sort of leaked plans for the future, things like AI and cloud coming in to sort of add extra power um, to these consoles
Yeah.
in a way.
Well,
Again, these could all be buzzwords as well, though. But whether the thing is that might not even be something that the Steam Deck 2 takes advantage of. It's not like we're seeing the Steam Deck, even though it is RDNA 2 and did get early access to RDNA 2. It isn't like it's been going, "Oh, we do ray tracing. This is capable of ray tracing." It's just something that RDNA 2 was capable of, and the Steam Deck is you can turn it on in certain games. Doesn't run very well, doesn't look very good, but it is possible. So yeah, we'll just have to speculate on that, won't we? Much like we're doing currently.
well, and my question is it possible that the AI, bit that you're tying it to, right, is, like, is that at all similar to the conversation we were having about, the, DLSS AI
Mm.
upscaling that was being talked about with the hardware for Nintendo Switch, right? And that this idea um, that there is this ability to take advantage of AI to upscale lower resolution base image and give kind of the appearance of a much higher resolution, higher performance image through that AI upscaling. And maybe that's what we're talking about, right?
It
And
is
that,
possible.
is an
FSR.
application of a similar type of technology?
Yeah, I mean, the Steam Deck it supports FSR 2 currently, and FSR. It's got its own built-in FSR, which is it's on a system level, not in the game level. So you upscale smaller image using the Steam Deck, as opposed to in the game doing it, which is FSR 2. FSR 3 is sort of in the works. It's sort of open source right now, as far as I know. You can download it and apply it to things, and what that does is adds frame generation. So where FSR 2 sort of focuses on the upscaling of the image, this seems to insert frames to sort of give you a better frame rate. The mod, or as it currently exists, you can actually get that running on the Steam Deck. It's not good. It's not worth doing because the UI also will flicker constantly because it's generating flames and
Yeah.
not factoring the UI into it because it's just again being laid over the top. It's not built into the game. Um, but that is the that's the sort of the thing that this could do, I guess, is allow the Steam Deck supports FSR2. Maybe the FSR3 is the next thing that Steam Deck gets, which is to boost the frame rates as well as boosting the resolution, so that we are getting a stronger, uh, performing, better looking game, much like we're hoping to get on the new Switch using DLSS. I Yeah, I think that's definitely very possible, and I think the fact that we're talking of a couple of years difference here, um, we might even see that the technology has evolved and surpassed that, and we might see something else entirely by that point.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, right? Because it's I mean, even if this is true, right, like, that these specs are currently what they're targeting, that's we're years away from release, so the idea that there would be changes to that over time is not surprising at all, right?
Mhm.
As new
Yeah.
technology becomes, available and as newer technology becomes more affordable.
Yeah, we
Speak
speculate. We speculate.
we speculate. Uh, speaking of more new stuff, there's no specific numbers listed for RAM, like what the capacity would be, but the rumor claims that the device would be using LPDDR5X RAM, which at a rate of 8,533 mega transfers per second, which is compared to the current deck is using the DDR5 standard RAM, right? So the X is like the newer, like upgraded version, and it's running at 5,500 mega transfers per second. So again, like not double, but like
Faster.
yeah, quite a bit faster, right? That's a pretty significant upgrade. And then
Mhm.
similarly, the claim is also the screen is a pretty big upgrade as well, right? Getting bumped up to a 900p resolution, that same 16:10 aspect ratio, OLED out the box, 90 hertz is the claim.
Yeah,
Um,
which would be good. I think that there are a lot of games that could take advantage of a bump in resolution. I do think 800p and 720p are good sweet spots for things. But if
mhm,
this is going to be more powerful when it can sort of just close that gap a little bit, 900p is going to look great. We see a lot of Switch games um, choosing 900p as its resolution to
yeah,
get 60 frames, or in some cases just to get 30 frames. But to on the big screen, 900p for Zelda, for example, looks fine. Imagine how 900p would look in your hand on
yeah,
a 7.4-inch screen or whatever. 90 keeping 90 hertz is great. 90 hertz has been really smooth for me. My favorite thing about 90 hertz on the deck is not necessarily that I can take indie games or fan games or even like emulate games
yeah,
and
vintage.
bump them up to 90 hertz. But what I also like doing is taking like heavier games, Control, for example, stuff that's maybe a bit harder to run, bumping it down to 45 hertz, keeping it within that 90 hertz sort of refresh rate, and it looks great. It looks smooth. It sort of runs really well. Um, so I've enjoyed having that option. Whereas 30, I think, is still a bit too choppy for me. I would prefer to get higher than that. Um, and 90 hertz, yeah, 90 hertz, 45 hertz, that difference is nice for me.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. That definitely makes a big that difference between 30 and 45. I think does make a pretty big difference. So yeah, I mean, kind of, I guess the summary here is right. It's like you're looking at a device that is significantly more powerful, significantly faster, not a major reinvention of the wheel as much as an iteration of the concept, which is I think what we would expect, right? Like I
Mhm.
think if you are having a more PC type mindset, it is going to be more iterative, I think, than innovative every time you get a new one.
Yes.
I don't imagine we need to like work in new gimmicks. It's more like how do you improve the build quality and the performance without increasing the price, right? Is I think
Yes.
going to
I
be the goal with these iterations.
I think that's the thing with PCs is you've had the same thing for so long. It's a box, and I know it's the same for consoles, but but it feels like more of a PC thing to not change anything except the stuff inside it to keep you can even keep the outside the exact same,
Sure.
um, and just plucking parts out. You won't be able to do that in quite the same way, but I do think that the Steam Deck's form factor, it's maybe they if they wanted to shrink it down, they could, but I've completely changed my mind on the Steam Deck is too big thing. I actually think the Steam Deck is the perfect size for the combination of like the screen size, the battery, the
Yeah.
number of controls. If you were to shrink this down, you'd lose things like the touchpads, you'd lose the full back buttons, you'd lose some battery life, you'd lose a bit of
Yeah, I don't
screen
think
real
you can
estate.
make it smaller without compromising what it is.
That which is it's the opposite of when I first saw the comparisons of the Steam Deck and the Switch, and I said I'm going to wait for them to do a smaller version of this because there's no way that this is going to be playable for long periods of time. It's how I'm going to carry it around, and now it's my favorite handheld because in fact it's my favorite way to play games. Period, because it is just like ergonomically fits in my hand. It is comfortable. It lasts for a long time. And yeah, I think people in my life are bored of me talking about the Steam Deck because all I keep saying is like, you need to, you know, give this thing a go.
And that's why we have a podcast about
That is why we have a podcast about it.
it. So then the other kind of, I guess, last bit of information that's worth sharing is that the claim is that the device would be launching sometime in 2026, late 2026 is what they say,
Mhm.
which, potentially lines up with like the timeline that Valve has discussed in the past, right? That they feel an iteration for the devices is still a couple years away,
Yeah.
that seems to make sense, based on what we've been told. I guess the question is, is that insider information or is that an educated guess based on what's been said before?
Yeah, there's a I remember when, people they like to leak, like, fake, Pokemon games or, people used to leak Nintendo Switch stuff, and they would pepper in stuff that we kind of already knew about or stuff that Nintendo had mentioned was coming, like, "Oh, in this direct, we'll have Super Mario, Wii U or whatever, because we knew that was coming, and then they'd also have that next to like, "Oh, it's Metro Prime 5," um, because they wanna add some legitimacy by just bringing in the stuff that we already knew about. Um,
Yeah, yeah,
so
and
yeah.
I think when you look at something like that, it becomes pretty easy to kinda oscillate between those 2 extremes, right? Is like, is this something that's being said because it's believable, or
Mhm.
is it believable because it actually makes sense? And,
Yeah.
you know, the reality is we don't know enough, right? The origins of this is too dubious, I think, for us to plant a flag in any kind of direction, but, I could kinda see this being an either/or situation where, like, maybe there's some truth to this, but also it could just be that they made a bunch of very safe predictions that, you know, if they pan out, it'll look like they were right, and
Yeah.
if not, then well, of course I wasn't right. Plans changed. It was 2 years ago when I said that.
Yeah. That is a I always remember, Super Metal Dave was a YouTuber who, before the Switch was coming out, he was saying, "Oh, it's going to be this super powerful home console. They're not doing a hybrid thing. I've seen all these people talking about detachable controllers and it being a sort of a handheld or a hybrid system. That's not what it's going to be. It's going to be exactly what we know." And there's a video of him, a live stream of him watching the reveal of this Nintendo NX. What is it going to be thing? And as soon as he sees the guy pick it up out of the dock, his face just drops, and you can see that he's thinking about everything he's ever said and how it's now going to be completely incorrect.
It's rough.
I think going through a forum for this sort of thing is probably a good way to avoid yourself getting, especially just don't double down on it. Maybe what we should do is we should come up with uh, a load of specs for what we think the Steam Deck 2 is going to be, and then we should leak them somewhere, and then we should get a bunch of coverage on these things. Maybe that's a marketing technique. That's just called link building. Actually, is what I've invented there. I've invented a very
Yeah, you
legitimate
just
link.
you post the content and then post about, "Oh, somebody said this."
Yeah. That is exactly. I've done that as a job. So yeah, I did just reinvent the wheel there. But yeah, that's. I don't. I'm sorry if I don't sound as enthusiastic about this as maybe I usually do. One, I'm very tired, and two, like I said before, I'm reporting on this. We're reporting on this because other people are reporting on this.
Yeah, it's one of those things where, like, I think if it ends up being true, then it's interesting, right? But like knowing so little about it makes it hard for me to like offer more than, well, this is what the story is, right? Do you believe it or not? And I mean, with where we're at, it's like I it's such a safe prediction that I'm like, yeah, I mean, sure, it could be right, right?
Mhm.
But also, I'm not taking this one to the bank either. So, I
Yeah.
think we'll see, right? If more similar rumors come out and it seems like there's more smoke, then maybe there's some fire here. But
Yeah,
for now,
I will gladly
I'm
come out and apologize, and say that I should have believed
should
it.
have been more
Or what I'll
bullish.
do is when they announce it, I'll go, "Yeah, I said that this was real the whole time," and then nobody's ever gonna go back and prove me wrong. So
Oh, please, they will. All right. So if you guys want to write in and let us know what you think about this rumor, whether or not you think that it's anything, and if it is real, are you happy with these specs? Is this an upgrade that you'd be psyched to get your hands on, or does this not feel like enough of an upgrade for you as a current Steam Deck owner? I'm interested to hear what people think. We've got a lot more conversation about the Steam Deck to get into in just a second here. But before we do that, let me remind you that this episode of the Steam Deck podcast is brought to you by our Patreon producers for the month of January. They are, of course, Arnold J. Rimmer, Christopher Valenz, Earth Visitor, Gabriel Hasselmeyer, aka Sobi, Snackago, Steve Stompy, Susan Likes Cats and also Boobies, Ty the Dude, and Wakahula. Thank you all so much for your support over on patreon.com/flipscreengames. You're all the reals to the real, and we greatly appreciate your support of this and all of our sister shows. Remember, if you want to go and show your support just like they did, if you want to write into the show and be part of the Steam docket, if you want to go and get involved in the community in any of the other ways that you can, guess what? You can head over to flipscreen.games. That's our website where you will find links to all that and much more. However, you choose to get involved or show your support, we thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Steam Deck podcast. Max, you've been
hello.
playing a little game called Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown. You're playing it on Steam Deck. It is not on Steam.
Mhm.
How we doing? How are you liking it? How First of all, how are you liking the game? Second of all,
Yeah.
how has your experience been on Steam Deck that it's not a native game? And what made you decide to play it on Steam Deck instead of on one of those other places where you could get it, like the Switch or the PS5 or what have you?
So I played this first October last year at EGX on the Switch, and I might have even talked about it on my Nintendo Noise back whenever that was in
I think
October.
you did. Yeah.
Um, and I was fully dead set on playing this on there, and then I decided, okay, maybe when the OLED, when the OLED, when I got my hands on my OLED, I thought I'd like to play everything here, so I'll get it on there. Then I saw it was an Epic Games exclusive, and I thought, right, there's too many hoops to jump through for me for that to be interesting. So I'll just get it on Switch again. I sort of, I flip flop back and forth. Then the demo came out, and I thought, all right, I'll give it a go on both. Found it really easy to install Ubisoft Connect on my Steam Deck, very much
Nice.
in the same way that BattleNet was before. You just download the installer, run the installer, or add the installer as a non-Steam game, run it with Proton. Um, Bob's your uncle. You then open it, and then you download the game, and you're in. You're in. It's not like it's got like an obvious button on my Steam Deck that I can press and it boots the game straight up. I go into Ubisoft Connect. I could set that up, but I'm worried about the cloud saves not syncing properly. So there we go. Um, so that's the way that I've chosen to do it. However, that's not the only way to do it. I've seen recently people have bought it on the Epic Store and used Heroic. That's valid. I've seen people emulating it on the Switch version on Yuzu. I do think that is the worst version of them all, just because it's locked to 60 FPS. It's only ever going to be as good as the Switch version is going to be. I would recommend, if you're going to play this game, to go the actual PC route on the Switch. Um, there's one option I wanted to point out, which I learned of this week, which is non-Steam launchers. We're going to put a link to the GitHub in the description of the episode, where you can run non-Steam launchers, follow these sort of instructions. It just gives you like a list of like 20, I think it is, sort of launchers and things. Let me just read out the list. I will get to the game in a second. Let me just read this out. But you can, by running this, you can automatically install and configure and have on your in your Steam non-Steam library Amazon Game Launcher, Battle.net, EA App, Epic Games, GOG Galaxy, Humble Games Collection, Indie Gala, itch.io, Legacy Games, Origin, Rockstar Games Launcher, Ubisoft Connect, Glyph, Minecraft, PlayStation Plus, DMM Games Magic, BK Play. Then there's also streaming site or ones like Xbox Game Pass, GeForce Now, Amazon Luna. You can get Netflix, Amazon Prime Video, Disney Plus, Hulu, YouTube, and Twitch all on there. I mean, most of those are going to be links to websites or in the browser, but some of these are going to be apps that you're going to download. So if you want to go the way of downloading your other launchers to be able to play this game or other games, that's probably a good way of doing it. Apparently, it's very easy. It's got a very simple GUI interface. You just run it and it does it automatically. Anyway, the game. Why the game isn't on Steam, by the way, I don't know. I've tried looking into this in
It's an
preparation
EGS
for this
exclusive,
chat.
right?
Yeah, but it's not because I bought it on it. I didn't buy it on Epic. I bought it on Ubisoft Connect because that was where it was cheapest for me.
Hmm.
Um, so
I
I
wonder if they
actually,
signed
I
a semi-exclusive deal with Epic where it's not
yeah,
on Steam, it's on Epic, but also you could get it on the Ubisoft store, right? Maybe.
yeah. Or I wonder if when you open it in Epic, it just opens the Ubisoft store anyway.
Maybe,
So
yeah.
yeah, it's probably some sort of deal. It might come to Switch at some point. Sorry, it might come to Steam at some point. I don't know if that's
It
possible.
it probably
Um,
will. I would imagine it's well, I don't know. Does Ubisoft
Maybe
not put its game on
eventually.
Steam? Is
It
that
does, but not
yeah.
well, it does now more than it used to. It didn't used to. It started bringing them back. Assassin's Creed Valhalla, for example, came back to Steam
Yeah.
after a while.
So it'll probably
Um,
come I would
so it might
imagine they
probably come
probably signed a
eventually.
semi-exclusive deal with Epic to offset the cost of development, right? That would be my
Yeah, 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 yeah. But I do think this game is going to make back the cost of development because it is very good. So let's go into the game. The game so far, I've played about 2.5 hours of it, and I'm loving it. Those who maybe have listened to me on this show or the other shows know I'm a huge fan of Metroidvania games. I like sort of Dark Souls games for the sort of tough combat. I like the exploration elements. I like games like Ori and the Blind Forest. I like Ori and the Will of the Wisps. I like Hollow Knight. Um, Metroid Dread, all of these games that for me speak to me about everything I like about video games. This does a lot of that, and it has fantastic combat. Um, it runs really well on the Steam Deck. There is more initial setup for it, but I'm getting locked 90 FPS. I'm running at ultra settings. I've got the anti-aliasing turned all the way up, so it's running the best it possibly can. Um, and yeah, it looks great. Like visually, it does have, like, a more cartoony style than, some of the later Prince of Persia games did, not the reboot in 2008 because that's, if anything, more cartoony, but where they sort of went for more realistic, edgy, look for, like, The Warrior Within and the Two Thrones. This very much brings it right back to more of a
very
cartoony style.
stylized.
It is very stylized, yeah, and I think it reminds me a little bit of the Immortals Fenyx Rising game that they did back in the day whenever that was. And that was sort of doing myths and legends and things like that. This very much feels like it's doing the same thing. It's telling a story. It's using myths and legends.
Mhm.
So the art style sort of fits it, I think. Um, it's got a good sort of interesting cast of characters so far. More characters than I was expecting. More story than I was expecting as well. From sort of this style of game.
It seems like it's
The
pretty cutscene heavy from, like, what we've seen. Is that true?
Yeah, there's definitely, the cuts not cutscenes in terms of like, full, uh, animated cutscenes, but there is sort of, characters show up and there is dialogue and, characters talk to one another, but there is more of that than I was expecting. But there's a lot of story and lore and the world feels quite rich and they are creating it's a new, um, sort of universe, Prince of Persia universe with sort of really leaning into like gods and things like that. But it is doing it for me a lot. I've not played enough to sort of fully make this claim, but it is leaning towards one of my favorite sort of 2D combat styles. It's very fast paced. It's very fluid. There's a lot of parrying. There's a lot of dodging. There's a lot of variety in like juggling characters in the air and using your bow and arrow and your chakram, and it all feels very natural and very fluid. And um, yeah, from now only this sort of short way in, I'm really enjoying the combat. I'm playing it on hard mode, so I am actually dying a lot and I'm struggling a lot as I sort of learn to pick it up. But that's fine with me. The bosses are tough, and that's what I like overcoming and learning and becoming better. And I wouldn't want to sort of breeze through this sort of thing first time anyway.
So talk to me a little bit about it because you said bosses are tough. game is tough generally, that it's got that kind of combat that you respond to. It's action oriented. There's a lot of parrying. Like, what can you think of another game that's like a 2D kind of thing that might be a good point of comparison for people? Because at the rip, right, you said like you're into the Metroidvania of it all, right? Like those kinds of games. Would you say this feels is it very Metroidvania-y? Is there a lot of exploration and backtracking? Is it more uh straightforward, like combat oriented? Like what I guess what's the moment to moment gameplay like, right? Like what's the flow of it in terms of like if I'm playing through a section of the game, right? Is it like
Mhm.
combat balanced with exploration and it's getting broken up by cutscenes and story beats? Is it like what's the flow like?
So what you described there is very much Sands of Time, the sort of the classic style of um, Prince of the
Persia.
Persia game, where it is, there's parkour and then there's some fighting, and then you're moving on to the next area, and then you can't really go back. Whereas this is a Metroidvania in that you start in a world, you're sort of moving around a map, you're unlocking bits of the map, you're finding different things, you're finding a new item. So I unlocked I found the bow and arrow, um, and using that bow and arrow, I was able to access new areas. The bow and arrow can also be used as a chakram, which also opens other areas, and you find you find places where you're like, oh, I obviously can't go here yet. I'll come back here later. And the way they do that is a really clever system called the memory shard system. Um, where you can press down on the D-pad at any time to basically take a screenshot of what you can see on the screen at the time and add that to the map. And you can then, when you're looking at your map, you can see these areas that you've highlighted and you go, oh, what was that? What have I put there? You can hover over it and see, oh, in this area, I needed to be able to double jump or I needed to be able to, get across this
Oh,
gap. So you
that's
can just go
cool.
back there and do that. It's a really unique and innovative system that I think that a lot of games should just straight up steal because it's really clever. The way it does it. It basically takes a lot of the faff work out of it. It feels like these people have played all of these games that I mentioned before. They clearly are aware of the genre, and they were like, "How do we improve on things that we specifically don't like about it?" And I think that they've done a really good job. However, it does also still feel like the classic Prince of Persia's in the way that there is still elements of parkour. There are still like swinging traps to overcome and buzzsaws to sort of dodge under and stuff like that. But it's not you doing some parkour, watching a cutscene, doing some fighting, doing some parkour. It's like, how do I get from A to B? How do I navigate through this world? Where am I going next? And there's sort of side quests to pick up, and there's characters to speak to, and there's a main quest you want to follow to sort of, you want to find the prince who has been kidnapped, um, and that is the driving force behind it. But enemies sort of are scattered around, and much like in Metroid Dread, I know you played Metroid Dread. You'll leave a room, come back in, the enemies are going to be exactly where they are. So it's not like there are specific set pieces of combat. It's just like
Gotcha. Okay.
there are enemies in this area, so you have to fight these enemies. And it reminds me of Dread in you said about sort of games that are comparable. And I think Metroid Dread is a great one because Metroid Dread is so fast paced and fluid, and you are, you know, zooming around, wall jumping, sliding under things, parrying attacks and stuff like that. And this does a lot of that stuff. It's just you don't have a gun. You have two swords, and you are scrapping, right? You're close up to people, you're parrying them, you're dodging them. They're flashing up with red attacks, you have to dodge. They're flashing up with yellow attacks, you have to parry. It's a really nice system. There's elements of things like Sekiro in there where you want to be like parry, parry, parry. There's elements of games like Devil May Cry or action games like that where you're juggling enemies because when they're in the air, they can't fight back or defend. They're sort of immune. So you want to get them in the air, keep them in the air for as long as possible, juggle them with an arrow, which is exactly what like Bayonetta and Devil May Cry do. You want to keep these enemies in the air by just constantly pounding them with bullets and stuff like that. It's just a lovely mix of all the things um, that I like, and so far I'm really enjoying it. And thing is, I knew this game would be good. I have been holding out hope for this game since they first announced it. I was immediately like, yeah, this is going to be a good game. I think a lot of people, because they were so desperate for this Prince of Persia Sands of Time remaster that sort of was announced and then it didn't look good, and then they took it away from one developer, gave it to another, and we're still waiting for it. People maybe think that this is taking away from that, but I do think this is something very different. And I think
Yeah, that's
it's
looking backward. This is trying to look forward, right? Because it's like
exactly, yeah.
I don't think Prince of Persia can go back to Sands of Time because that's like what Assassin's Creed became. It's like we don't
Yeah.
need another series that is kind of just similar. Like this is giving it a chance to like reconnect with its roots and do something that, is not only different than, the marquee franchise that they already have that it inspired, but also that like can fill a different gap, right? Like they don't have any other 2D action games. They don't have any other 2D games like
Yeah.
at all, really. It's like
Yeah.
here and there in the past they have, but like that's not a thing. And if they could bring this back and make it a successful 2D side scrolling franchise for them, it's like
Mhm.
I think that could be an important piece of their portfolio, not only to have something different, but to have things that are smaller, that cost less to make, that take less time to produce, that
Mhm.
speaks to a different audience, and folks that don't really want the big AAA third person action adventure game. They want an indie game, and like
Yeah.
this could be Ubisoft's chance to court those people.
The 2D side scroller they did have that was very successful to them is Rayman Legends, and this is the same team that made Rayman Legends, so you've got that
Yeah.
quality behind it there.
What was the deal with those? I feel like there was that in Origins, and like those games like came and were like hot, and it feels like maybe they just didn't sell well, but I mean,
I think they probably did fine. I mean, Origins came out, and then they did Legends, and Legends I think was the one that sort of took off the most. That got
yeah,
re-released
I
on
mean, I
on
remember
the
them both being
Switch.
big hits at the time, and it's
Yeah.
weird to me that they never really. You'd think that they would have kept it going.
Yeah, I wonder if they ended up working on something else because yeah, you got to imagine that team's been working on something between Legends and now, unless they've just been
Yeah,
helping out with like Mario and Rabbids because that was a sort of
yeah,
Rayman franchise,
true.
or maybe there has been some Rayman in the works and it got cancelled. We don't, who
I know
knows
there's that
what's been going on.
There's a Netflix show. They did like a Far Cry Blood Dragon show a long time ago, and they did like a new Ubisoft show on Netflix that is like a bunch of their characters like mashed up in this weird. I
Oh,
haven't, but Rayman is like featured in it prominently. I've not seen it, but he's like in the thumbnail on Netflix, and like he's mentioned in a bunch of.
okay.
So I don't know what the deal is there, but I'm
So
wondering
he's
if
still around.
maybe they're building towards a new Rayman thing. You
Yeah,
know?
that's very possible. Oh, it seems like they're also. Hang on, I'm just looking at now. So they worked on things. They worked on Rayman Legends. They worked on Valiant Hearts: The Great War. Didn't realize that was.
Oh, great
I
game.
didn't realize that was internal with them.
Yeah.
Then they
That
worked
was one of the
on.
Ubi Arts originals or
Oh
whatever.
yes, yeah,
Ubi
yeah,
Arts
yeah.
series, yeah. That game's
They
really
worked.
cool.
Then they worked on Prince of Persia: Lost Crown. So that's like a 10-year gap there. But they're also. Oh, I see. They've also been helping out with Beyond Good and Evil 2, which is probably what they've been doing for the last 10 years with
Oh, so they've been wasting their
absolutely
time
nowhere to go.
for
They've been doing that.
cool. I'm
However, I
glad
do
they're
think
off that.
I think this is a great sort of return to them doing 2D games. I think there wasn't a better team at Ubisoft to sort of do this. I'm not very far in. I am talking about this like I've already finished it and that uh, love it. But I adore what I've played so far. It's really speaking to me. I just want to sort of play more. It's a
Do we
shame it's
know
so
how
late.
long it is,
It's supposed
roughly?
to be if you do everything, it's about 25 hours long, which is quite
Oh,
meaty for a
wow.
Metroidvania. It's
Yeah,
like
that's pretty
it's a
beefy.
sizable game. The world seems pretty big. I'm not the fast travel yet. I assume that sort of shrinks it down a lot.
Mhm.
But there seems to be a lot of content here. There seems to be a lot of stuff. I like seeing a large variety of things that I don't know how to interact with yet because I'm like, I know at some point I'm going to come back fully powered and just sweep all of this
Yeah.
up, and it's going to be very satisfying. And
I love that.
I can see that building up, and I'm making a lot of like screenshots on my map. I've only got 15 of them, but I think I've used about 10 of them so far. I'm trying to be at least a little bit sparing if I'm like, oh, it's very obvious that this map continues on here. So if I just walk away from here, I'm going to know there's somewhere for me to go in that direction. But if I like hit a corner of the map and there's something I can see or I can't get to, I'm like, right, I'll mark that. Um, Mm. so I think that if you have any interest in Metroidvania games, if you have any interest in just in Prince of Persia in general, because I recently played through The Sands of Time and I enjoyed that thoroughly on the Steam Deck. I would highly recommend giving this one a go. If you have any interest in just supporting the number one tastemaker's taste-making abilities, hop in and give this one a go. And I think the Steam Deck is a great place to play it, even though there are hoops to jump through. And I think
You think
that
it's worth doing that instead of playing it somewhere else?
possibly you can if you were to subscribe to Ubisoft Plus for £15 a month. I didn't know that was an option before I pre-ordered this. You can get access to the game, and then with the cloud saves and the fact that you can play this anywhere once you have that subscription, you could be playing this across your Switch, PS5, Steam Deck, PC, whatever you have, quite seamlessly as far as I'm concerned, as far as I know. But I do like playing it on the Steam Deck, mostly because it's my favorite way to play things at the moment. Um, but I do, not to say that the Switch version is bad. The Switch version still runs at 60 FPS. It still sort of looks good. The Switch version was the base version they were working on. That was like their baseline. It had to run as good as it does on the Switch, and then everything else just got sort of a boost. It's
So it sounds like
4K.
it's a viable way to, like, play, but
Oh,
you're going
absolutely,
with
but
the platform that you're enjoying the most, right?
yeah,
So
exactly. Yeah,
totally.
I think there's bigger battery life. 90 hertz or 90 FPS.
Especially on that OLED, right? Like,
Yeah,
that's
oh yeah, the
probably
OLED
quite a bit
screen,
longer.
yeah. Yes, yeah. So I'm really, really enjoying the game. I've been so excited to play. I've been really jealous of everyone that was subscribed to Ubisoft Plus and got to play it on Monday. Uh, Jealous of all the reviewers. I think I played through the demo 4 times. There is a demo if you really want to
Nice.
confirm if this is your kind of game. Um, but yeah, really, really, really enjoying it. Looking forward to probably talking some more about it next week when I've sort of a bit further into it. Um, because I'm sure Steve will have some questions too about it. But for me, this is like really setting off 2024 in a good way where we're already getting like a meaty, exciting game that, I'm already aware that it's gonna rank quite highly for me because of the kind of game it is and the sort of the quality of what I've enjoyed. Um, so yeah, good game,
Alright.
give go.
Beautiful. I love that, man. Yeah, I'm very excited to hear more about it. It definitely caught my attention when they first revealed it, and hearing you, speak so highly of it is definitely, making me interested to give it a go. So
Good
maybe
stuff.
I'll have some thoughts on it next week too, we'll see. But, yeah, okay. So thank you guys for joining us here on another episode of the Steam Deck podcast. If you wanna write in and let us know your thoughts on, like I said, the Steam Deck, 2 successor, whatever rumors that we talked about at the top, or if you're playing Prince of Persia, we'd love to hear from you and hear, what your experience has been like and why you're playing it on deck, or I honestly, like, if you've got any experience with non-Steam games and, like, you wanna talk about that, I'm interested in hearing, like, how people get on with that and what are the games that you've, made those efforts to play here and why? Like, what is it about playing it on Steam Deck that makes it worth that extra effort? Because I think it's an interesting question. So remember, if you want to write in and answer those questions or write in for next week's show with your own question, there's a bunch of ways you can do that and get involved. Hit us up at flipscreen.games. That's our website where you will find links to all the places we are all over the web, including our Patreon, including our Discord, including our email address. You can write in, be part of the Steam docket, and get your questions right on the air. You can keep the conversation rolling between episodes over on our Discord. However, you choose to get involved or show your support. Thank you for joining us for another episode of the Steam Deck podcast. And thank you for being a member of the Flip Screen Games community. For the crew, I've been Pete. He's been Max. We'll see you next week.